On Sunday, the 3rd of May 2026, Peter Obi and Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso walked into the National Secretariat of the Nigeria Democratic Congress, the NDC, collected their membership cards to loud cheers, and declared a new beginning. By Monday, less than 24 hours later, the NDC's Kano state chairman was already on record saying he would not hand over the party structure to Kwankwaso. New party, same crisis. Welcome to Political Pulse. Today, we are not just covering a defection, we are diagnosing a pattern. Let's start with one number: 5. That is the number of political parties Peter Obi has belonged to since Nigeria's Fourth Republic, and we haven't even reached 2027 yet. He started in APGA, under which he won the Anambra governorship and served 2 terms. In 2014, he moved to the PDP, where he later became Atiku Abubakar's running mate in the 2019 presidential election. He left the PDP for the Labour Party in 2022, ran one of the most energizing opposition campaigns in recent Nigerian politics, and secured over 6 million votes. He then left Labour, citing internal crises, and joined the ADC in December 2025. He lasted 4 months. As of the 3rd of May 2026, he is now in the NDC. 5 parties, 1 man, 1 consistent message. Now, this is not about mocking Peter Obi. By most accounts, he is a man of genuine conviction. But conviction alone does not win elections. Structure does. Stability does. And if you keep leaving every house because of termites, at some point, the question is no longer just about the house. So what happened in the ADC? Let's be precise. The ADC was supposed to be the great opposition experiment. In late 2025, Peter Obi joined. Then Atiku Abubakar, former vice president, also came in under the chairmanship of David Mark. On paper, it looked like one of the most credible opposition coalitions Nigeria had assembled in years. In practice, it was a coalition sitting on a legal landmine. A leadership dispute within the ADC had already reached the Supreme Court of Nigeria. The court's ruling, rather than resolving the crisis, sent the matter back to a lower court, meaning the litigation continued, the uncertainty remained, and NDC's deadline for party processes was closing in fast. But the legal crisis was not the only problem. It was the visible symptom. The deeper issue was the presidential ticket. Multiple reports and political insiders pointed to growing tension around who would emerge as the party's 2027 candidate, particularly whether Atiku Abubakar would step aside for a southern candidate. The ADC had no clearly defined zoning framework, and without that, there was no agreed mechanism for resolving the question. Obi and Kwankwaso appear to have concluded that the structure could not guarantee a fair and predictable process. Between ongoing litigation, internal maneuvering, and what Obi himself described as external interference undermining party stability, the ADC was no longer a viable vehicle, and they moved. Obi was notably candid in his public remarks. He said he had no personal grievances with David Mark or Atiku Abubakar. He framed the problem as systemic, describing a toxic environment driven by intimidation, suspicion, and discouragement. He even drew a direct line between his experience in the Labour Party and what he encountered in the ADC. That parallel matters because it suggests this is not simply a series of isolated breakdowns. It is a recurring pattern. Now let's talk about Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, because his journey is equally instructive. Kwankwaso spent years in the PDP, a powerful political figure, two-time governor of Kano State and former Minister of Defense. He later moved to the new Nigeria People's Party, the NNPP, which became his primary vehicle into the 2023 election, where he finished fourth with a strong northern showing. In January 2025, the party's National Working Committee announced his expulsion, citing anti-party activities. The underlying concern was that the Kwankwaso movement, his political base, operated with a level of autonomy that sat uneasily alongside the formal party structure. He moved to the ADC, and what followed there began to echo what had already happened in the NNPP. In his own words, "We left the NNPP due to externally influenced legal problems that made our stay perilous. The ADC has now been forced into this same difficulty." NNPP, ADC, NDC. The pattern does not sit with one individual. It travels with the structure and the forces around it. But here is something the headlines buried. Datti Baba Ahmed, Peter Obi's running mate in the 2023 election, the man who stood beside him on that Labour Party platform, did not follow him to the NDC. He went in a different direction entirely, defecting to the People's Redemption Party, the PRP, and then he spoke, publicly, critically. Datti questioned Obi's decision to leave the ADC rather than stay and fight, saying, "Someone who got the Labour Party ticket so easily should have stayed to fix the problems of the Labour Party, however difficult they were." He described Obi's pattern of walking away from internal crises as inconsistent with the demands of national leadership. He also cast doubt on whether the Obi-Kwankwaso alliance, the so-called OK combination, can actually work. His words, "It is very unlikely that the North will rally around Obi and Kwankwaso." He noted the obvious tension at the heart of the arrangement. Kwankwaso is older, has a longer political profile, and carries his own presidential ambitions. The question of who is actually at the top of the ticket remains unresolved. Worth noting, Datti says he was the one who first suggested, in January 2024, that Obi should approach Kwankwaso. He now publicly doubts his own recommendation will work. When the man who ran with you in 2023 is not joining you in 2026 and is publicly questioning your strategy, that is a signal worth paying attention to. The same is true on the southern flank. Badebo Rhodes-Vivour, the Labour Party's 2023 governorship candidate in Lagos, who campaigned shoulder to shoulder with Peter Obi, who mobilised thousands across Lagos, who defected with Obi from Labour to the ADC, has announced he will not be following him into the NDC. In a video posted on the 5th of May 2026, Rhodes-Vivour wished Obi well but confirmed he is staying in the ADC. Think about what that means structurally. Obi's most prominent southern ally, the man who helped carry Lagos for him in 2023, is staying behind. The obedient coalition is not migrating intact. It is fragmenting at the very moment when cohesion matters most. And that brings us to what is already happening inside the NDC. At the event where he received his NDC membership card, Peter Obi made a very specific public plea. "Please let there be no litigation. Party members, please don't go to court. We are not lawyers. We want to build a party." Why would a man, on his first day in a new party, lead with a plea against litigation? Because he may already have understood the risks. By Monday morning, less than 24 hours after that speech, the NDC's Kano State Chairman, Usaini Issa Mairiga, gave an interview to Daily Post and was direct. He said talks with Kwankwaso over leadership arrangements had broken down. He said the national leadership had instructed the Kano branch to suspend a scheduled state congress, which he believed was to make room for a handover to Kwankwaso's camp. And then he said, he wants us to hand over the entire party to him, despite the sacrifices and time we invested in nurturing it when it had little or no attention. This will not happen. The ink on the membership cards was barely dry. This is the structural problem Nigerian opposition politics has repeatedly failed to resolve. When a political heavyweight like Kwankwaso, a man with a mass movement deeply rooted across Kano and the Northwest, enters a smaller party, he does not arrive alone. His support base comes with him. That base expects representation, leadership positions, and influence over the party structure. The original members resist. Conflict is not surprising in that context. It is structurally embedded. And that brings us to the elephant in the room, the question nobody at that Abuja secretariat is saying out loud. Who is the presidential candidate? Everything, every defection, every coalition, every legal dispute ultimately circles back to this one question. The presidential ticket is the prize. And historically, it has been the point at which opposition coalitions in Nigeria begin to fracture. Peter Obi brings the obedient movement, younger, urban voters, with strong support in the South and across the diaspora. In 2023, he secured over 6 million votes on a Labour Party platform with limited national structure. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso brings a different kind of strength, the Kwankwasiya, a well-established grassroots network, particularly in Kano, a key electoral stronghold. And without substantial northern support, no presidential candidate in Nigeria crosses the constitutional threshold. On paper, the alignment is obvious. Obi as presidential candidate, Kwankwaso as running mate, the OK combination. But the idea is not new. These two figures have been in orbit around each other since 2023. The alliance has never been formalized into a clearly defined, structured agreement. Now the NDC has to do exactly that, while managing internal resistance that has already begun to surface. And Dati Baba Ahmed's question hangs in the air. Kwankwaso didn't support Obi in 2022-23. What changed? And if Kwankwaso is older, more politically experienced, and equally ambitious, who is actually at the top of this ticket? Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress is watching closely. Presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga described Obi as a political nomad. Party spokesperson Felix Morka questioned the consistency of his political trajectory. These are political talking points, but they are the kind that resonate with undecided voters, particularly when the man's own 2023 running mate is publicly asking similar questions. So where does this leave us? Peter Obi did not leave the ADC simply because it was a bad party. He left because it could not guarantee a clear and credible path to the ticket, and because the legal uncertainty created real risk ahead of a hard deadline. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso did not leave because the ADC failed its members. He left because, as with the NNPP before it, the structure could not comfortably accommodate both his political base and the existing leadership. And now they are in the NDC, a smaller, cleaner platform, but one that is already showing familiar pressure points within days of their arrival. The furniture has moved. The house has not changed. Nigeria's opposition does not have a party problem. It has a power-sharing problem. And until its leading figures build coalitions on clearly agreed rules Rather than assumed dominance, they are likely to keep colliding with each other, regardless of sheets of the platform. The question for 2027 is simple. Can the NDC hold what the Labour Party and the ADC could not? The answer to that question will help determine whether Nigeria sees a genuinely competitive two-block contest or whether President Bola Ahmed Tinubu heads into a second term facing a divided opposition that spent more energy negotiating internally than consolidating externally. That's your political pulse for today. If this gave you a clearer picture of what's happening beneath the headlines, share it with someone who should see it. And in the comments, do you think an Obi Kwankwaso ticket can hold inside the NDC? And does it matter that their closest allies are not coming with them? This is Political Pulse. Subscribe, like, and share, because this conversation is far from over.